Before we begin, a reminder. This podcast discusses mature themes that may not be appropriate for all audiences. Please listen with care.
The parable of the Good Samaritan, all of the ancient exegesis that we know about it is allegorical. In the allegory, and as Augustine inflects it, the Good Samaritan is Jesus. The Good Samaritan is Christ. And in his incarnation and coming down from heaven and becoming one of us, he made himself our neighbor.
This is John Cavadini, the director of the McGrath Institute for Church Life and a theology professor at the University of Notre Dame. And, well, he's also my boss.
So that means that in every neighbor, we see Christ, because he bent down to become the neighbor. But then Christ, who came down to become our neighbor, performed the services of a neighbor to the man who was beaten up and lay lying in the road. And in the allegory, that's, of course, that's humanity, human beings who are beaten up by the devil and left lying wounded to fend for ourselves. And Jesus comes and binds up our wounds and then leaves us in the inn. And in the allegory, the inn was always a figure for the church. So the inn is the church, very much thought of as a place for healing.
I wanted to begin with this ancient image before turning to a very modern story, one that deals frankly with gender dysphoria, sexuality, and drug use, a very 21st century story of conversion that nonetheless shows the enduring truth of that ancient parable Christ once told about a sinner being taken up by Christ into the healing inn of his church. I'm Abigail Falvali, and you're listening to the Gender Accompaniment Project. This is episode 10, The Inn and the Open Door.
I'm Njada. I don't know. Yeah, what do I say? I am 29. I'm a biblical studies master's student. Getting ready to graduate in the next year, deciding whether I want to go on to do research or to teach high school. I'm kind of now leaning a little bit more toward teaching.
Njada was actually the first person we interviewed for this series. His story is messy and honest and takes quite a few surprising turns. The dramatic way that he returns to the church after years away has stuck with me, and I think his story has something powerful to say about the nature and mission of the church, especially in our present moment. I'll return to this thought later on. For now, I want you to hear Njada's story as he first told it to me.
Yeah, I was born into a Catholic family, so I was baptized as a baby. But people didn't really take it very seriously. It was much more cultural. I wouldn't say that my parents didn't believe at all, but it was just sort of in a very nominal way. And my mom took it a little more seriously when I was quite little. And there was one time that I can remember her really emphasizing to me, when you grow up, you learn that Santa Claus isn't real, the Easter Bunny isn't real, but I want you to know that God is real and he loves you. That was kind of a significant moment, although I didn't really have a sense of belief in God. I always found going to Mass to be a burden. I just couldn't wait to get out of Mass. I didn't pay attention and I didn't really care. I didn't see the point. It just kind of seemed pointless. But as soon as I really started giving it thought, I had sort of this thought when I was a little before my teen years where I thought, well, if God exists, then you must have to dedicate your whole life to him. That must be the most important thing. But I thought about it and I was just but I don't really see any reason why I would believe. When I turned 13 or so, my dad became really, really devout. he really started to take his faith seriously. And there was a lot of good about that. But he also kind of, he immediately felt this really great pressure to convert his family in various different ways. He really like tried to pull us into arguments, my brother, me, and my mom. And that really just kind of pushed all of us away. My dad was already kind of this, like, had a sort of like macho sort of masculinity about him that to me was very kind of repelling. And a lot of it was very the sense that like we were having the Catholic faith sort of forced on us. And he would acknowledge that, like, he's the kind of guy who like he does stuff like that and then he goes, oh yeah, we shouldn't have done that.
Around this same time, Njada began listening to his older brother's skeptical views about religion.
As I started getting toward the end of middle school, I started thinking a little more philosophically about things. I started to think about LGBT kind of stuff. My brother also was really kind of an ally, so to speak. And so when I heard, it was just like when these things first kind of occurred to me, I was like, oh yeah, like why should someone feel ashamed if they're gay? And so then, when I heard that, well, the Catholic faith is against that, then I just, then it wasn't anymore like, oh, I just don't really see any reason to believe in the Catholic faith. I started to really see it as the thing that's kind of like holding the world back.
In high school, Njada began experimenting with other philosophical and spiritual traditions before finally settling into the new atheist movement, which had become big on social media at the time.
I kind of experimented with spirituality for like a year and a half or so at the beginning of high school, and then I was just like, nope, just atheist. I'm an atheist. So that was pretty much how I stayed for 6 or 7 years or so.
Njada was not just experimenting with spirituality during this time. He was also experimenting with gender. During high school, he fluctuated through several different identities until, at the age of 19, he decided to socially transition and started taking hormones several months later. Njada transitioned while he was still an atheist.
I didn't think of myself as being having like a female soul or a feminine soul or something like that, really. Like I might have could have maybe used that metaphorically, but I would have just said, like, I don't know if it's something to do with how I was born or if it's to do with my earliest formative experiences, but I would have just said it seems so permanent now at this point that I might as well say I'm a woman. And so I didn't attempt, with that to say that meant I had some sort of female soul. I didn't even believe in a soul.
So did you have a theory of what might have been going on, like from a materialist perspective?
I kind of guessed, I tended to guess that it was due to some kind of really, really early childhood trauma, or that it could have been like some sort of like trauma of something that happened with my mom while I was in the womb or something.
Right.
So I assumed that it was like so deep that I don't remember it.
So did you start to experience this sense of, I don't know what to call it, but gender disconnect at a pretty young age, or when did you start to notice it?
Yeah, I must have felt some kind of gender disconnect when I was really little, because I do have, you can always kind of retcon this kind of thing. And but I really wanted to be a girl for a certain amount of time there when I was like 4 and 5 years old. I really wanted to act like a girl, imitate a girl, so to speak. In like games that I would play with my brother, I would like find excuses to pretend that I was a girl. But then my brother would like be weirded out by it, but I would want to do it anyway, and something would feel weird about that. And I knew like early on, like you just don't do anything like that around Dad. He really wanted me to be into pretty stereotypical guy stuff. Not necessarily a bad thing, but he was like, pushy about it. And as I got old enough that I was like thinking enough about it. It was sort of like, well, yeah, I know how Dad would react. Like, just let's not even entertain these thoughts. So I think that maybe made it really easy to ignore for a long time. But then when puberty hit, I think, yeah, puberty is really when a lot of this latent stuff just kind of exploded.
The sexual awakening that comes with puberty, as you can imagine, made Njada's feelings about gender much more complicated, especially after he was exposed to pornography at a young age.
At first, I wasn't thinking of it like, oh, I wish that I was a girl. I wish that I was growing up as a girl right now. It was because it's very hard not to be thinking, well, wow, like I'm so attracted to the girls. It's really, really hard not to be thinking that's what I want. I want a girlfriend. But I still felt really gross about it too. Like, I felt just a really, just kind of extreme mix of feelings. I, got exposed to porn when I was 12, 13 or so, like, right at the time that puberty started. That obviously had very devastating effects on me. Probably me in particular, having already like a predisposition to this kind of like tension. I'm being a little bit euphemistic, want a girlfriend, like I'm having very sexual thoughts and feeling very bad about it,
Right.
I'm like staring at these girls and, me and my friends are like talking and whispering and giggling about, these girls and stuff. And it feels simultaneously really good and really horrible at the same time. And so once I started having all these like sexual feelings, then I feel really bad about it. Like I really did have a major conflict about how like I was objectifying the girls. Like I'm not going to say I wasn't. And so I felt really bad. That's the sort of thing that locks people in like porn addiction. People who get addicted to porn is because sometimes they have a very strong conscience about that kind of thing. They kind of know that it's wrong. Yeah, shame really does like trap people in the cycle of addiction. And so like the more that you're trying to use shame to like whip yourself to get yourself to not do it, you're just feeding that cycle. And it kind of like just kind of numbs you into complacency, like, oh, I'll never get through this. This is just the way that I am. But all of this stuff, like the sort of the thread that I'm trying to draw here is the compartmentalization and fragmentation of different parts of me. So there just being one part of me that thinks that women are like morally better than boys, or girls are. I'm thinking of being in middle school, and like girls are better than boys morally. They don't get caught up in this like gross stuff, and they seem to have more serious interests in people, whereas guys, like, they're all kind of caught up in their competitions and wanting the hottest girlfriend and whatever. So I had a certain kind of respect for women, and then there's a part of me that's like, I don't care. I just want to have sex with the sexiest girl, like, and that's I don't care. So I like have to just like own the fact that both of those really are there. But that's really fragmenting. That can kind of fragment a personality like mine. Because it was just sort of like, yeah, I did this thing. I looked at porn, I objectified the women, but I'm not really like that. Like, I know I'm not like that. I just had to get that out of my system, So if you just kind of like dismiss it that way, which I did, like I just, kept on going with that habit, and still feeling like I had this like personality resonance with the girls. It's this increasing sort of personality fragmentation of just like, this part of me is unacceptable, but it's really just what my body does, and that doesn't really matter.
Njada felt a fragmenting tension between, on the one hand, his sexual objectification of women, which gave him a profound sense of shame, and on the other hand, his idealization of women as morally superior.
I've talked to plenty of other detrans guys. It seems to usually be maybe it's because these are my examples that I learned from are from guys who detransitioned, who like had the sense to come back from it. That's always possible, but it seems like to me like the tendency is to idealize women, and that if I did stereotype women, it was because I had this like angelic view of women as being like can like hardly do no wrong.
You've talked quite a bit about how you regarded femininity in girls. I guess what was your kind of posture toward masculinity? Like, did you have a negative sense of like masculinity?
I would have probably acknowledged that there were real physiological reasons for men's drives, and that a lot of that stuff is like the reason why like men are really aggressive and really like sexually visual and have a much stronger sexual appetite that has more of a tendency to like shake a guy out of his wits. And so all of that stuff, that just seemed like that's just all negative. I didn't really see much that was redeemable about that. I mean, my therapist tells me to this day, like as much as I have embraced a lot about being a guy, and I continue to actually, learn to actually love things about being a guy, he'll still oftentimes tell me like, you just really don't like have much of a like sense of like there being positive things about men. I guess for guys who are transitioning, I would just say don't be too sure how much of it has to do with that they were not allowed to be feminine, or how much of it is that they're really embarrassed about the things about them that are just guyish and masculine, because it's a weird mix of that. Most people I've come across are really like sure that they think that the reason that guys transition is because they're really, really feminine and they weren't allowed to be feminine. And I think that the things about me that I perceived as feminine, I was very embarrassed about when I was younger. But the way that I idealized women, it was like women have certain weaknesses and therefore they're oppressed, but they're still awesome. So that shows how really, really awesome they are because they're oppressed and they're still awesome. Whereas men kind of suck and they have the privileges. So nobody ever puts it that way, but it's just a really common way of looking at the sexes. And it's very easy for people to interpret it that way, both the trans person and the people who are looking at what they're going through. Oh, it's because you weren't allowed to be feminine, you were forced to be masculine, and you hate that. I'm increasingly thinking that this is just like more the norm. I could be projecting because this is definitely the case for me. Yeah, I'm a really normal masculine guy. Like people won't be able to see me, but they can hear me. There's nothing feminine about me, other than the way that, there's something feminine about every guy. Like I'm as averagely masculine as can be. And I was deeply ashamed of that. I had very difficult times dealing with a lot of the social dynamics of being a guy. And in a lot of ways, I didn't want to admit that I had most of like the typical kind of male patterns and desires and interests. I was, obsessed with girls in middle school and early high school, and it's all like really basic stuff that to me was really repulsive. What it turned into somehow is that it was a major tension between my mind and my body, like just not seeing them as fitting together at all.
In this state of tension and fragmentation, Njada started the process of transition at age 19. And at first, this seemed to alleviate one source of his tension.
During transition, the hormones, the estrogen, the testosterone blockers took my sex drive way down. I no longer had to worry about that. That was my favorite thing about that. That gave me so much relief. I felt a lot more socially at ease.
But even as this tension eased, another source of tension emerged.
So the sexual part of it was sort of out of the way, but now the behavior was really the thing that was in focus. Society has agreed to ignore that they can tell that I was born male, but we're all better than that now, aren't we? Like we're getting beyond that. And I lived in a pretty liberal, progressive kind of secular sort of town where I was going to college. And nobody gave me any trouble about it, really. Like maybe one or two people at some point, and then everybody defended me, and people were like all on board with it. As soon as they learned that I was trans, oh well, you use she, her, do all this stuff. People act a little more delicate with me in certain ways, and it feels nice, and then I can feel kind of ladylike in a way. And so I start taking on a bit of these dynamics. And it's true to a certain extent, like it kind of happens. I can even still say that if I see a quote unquote trans woman who is really good at passing, I'll probably be inclined to behave a little bit more or like I'm talking to a woman. Like there's kind of a reality to it. You affect this kind of change. But I was there, now I'm the trans woman. So I'm experiencing this stuff right up close, and I'm experiencing all of the little minutia and all of the behavior. And it's the behavior, that you can't just dismiss that as being purely physical. I was ignoring, so much about very typical things about me that really were male, that weren't just my body. I mean, there's just a billion different little minute things that go on with all of our social interaction. There's a crazy amount of little minutia, and our sex plays a huge role in that. I think that people who say that all gendered expectations are just stereotypes, I think that they're completely blind, and they're very dulled to like how much every single person changes their behavior. Even the people who think that they're not doing that, everybody is adjusting their behavior according to the sex of the other person. It's very subtle, especially when we're kind of addicted to this idea that we're just going to break down all gender norms and we're going to, do away with all the differences between the sexes. And so I started to I found that just all the more, and I hear that plenty from detransitioners, is that the more that you tried to kind of imitate the other sex, all of the differences started to stand out, so much. Like a female body you can't really make it look like a male body. You can't really make a male body look like a female body very well.
From Njada's perspective, one of the central problems of transition is that it promises something that it can't deliver. It's not actually possible to fully adopt the body, behavior, and mannerisms of the other sex.
I don't think that transitioning is a good idea for anybody. I really don't. I realize that there's some people maybe who are they're so far down that path. I'm not going to bother. I'm not going around to anybody, grabbing them by the neck and telling them to not transition. But I just don't think it's ever a solution to be offering anybody. But that said, when I look at a lot of the men who transition, and they're very fully into it and everything, I kind of get why they're doing it in a lot of ways. I can't help but sympathize. And so I get why people do that. I don't think it's a good idea because I still don't think that it works. Functionally, socially, I don't think it works because functionally, socially, we work with the male-female binary thing. Again, with despite there being all kinds of variation between men and women. I would keep finding, though, that even apart from my clothing and everything, even after everybody accepted, okay, yes, you are a woman, we will socially put you in that category and we'll treat you accordingly. People would try their best, but I could still see that they couldn't really do it and that I couldn't really do it. Yeah, I just kept telling myself that these things didn't matter. All that mattered was what I felt inside, and I feel so sure that if I was born female, all of the social stuff that I deal with, all the social anxiety, all the social awkwardness, and just this sense of not belonging, not fitting into the world, that would go away. I guess going in between my sophomore and junior year of college, so I'm 20 years old, mental health was really, really taking a toll on me, I'm very, very dissatisfied with life. Very, can't stop thinking about stuff. Can't stop worrying about stuff. I did start to think I really do need something that spiritual traditions have to offer.
By this time, Njada had been identifying as a transgender woman for more than a year. And after years as an atheist, his mental health struggles prompted him to take a second look at spirituality. He was initially drawn to the traditions of Buddhism and Taoism, which emphasize self-possession and detachment. While he first approached these traditions from an atheist perspective, over time, his exploration of religion and spirituality reawakened a belief in God.
It helped me to kind of let go of a lot of my expectations about life, and to practice that sort of detaching from continually interpreting life. But that process kind of would end up returning me to, I can't just not desire certain things, and I can't just not be oriented towards some higher meaning. So I did start to find that I am naturally religious, but that I couldn't help but start to believe in God, that I had a certain relationship with reality that wasn't just this impersonal, unspeakable void. Yeah, I started finding myself believing in God, and that I had an actual relationship with reality. And it was a little vague, I have a relationship with the universe, I have a relationship with God, I have a relationship with reality. It was kind of all one and the same thing.
Njada also began to read the Bible, approaching it purely as a literary classic. He started with Genesis and read through Exodus.
It was really just, strangely enough, like reading the book of Exodus had this really big effect on me. And not because I really got what the point of it was. I was kind of like, what is even the point of all this? Like, I was just reading the Tao Te Ching. That's like the detached thing. And then like here, this is like something that feels completely the opposite. This is like a very personified God, like talking to a person in history and stuff happening. And I feel like God was doing something in my heart at that time where I just kind of was led to sort of stop and just observe what's going on in my heart. And I kind of couldn't help but feel like God, had an actual sort of like posture toward my heart. There was like that relational something there. I can look back and I can see how it changed my thinking just reading Genesis and Exodus. But I kind of left that aside, and continued on with like the things that were more like spiritually interesting to me.
Here is where Njada's story takes something of a surprising turn.
The thing that kind of complicates all of this like process of coming into the Catholic faith is that I was also at that exact same time also really, really enthusiastic about psychedelics. That was like the pinnacle experience of like the highlight of every month. Whenever it was about once a month for a little more than a year that I took LSD, and I took mushrooms twice, but it was almost always LSD. Let me just be like clear. Like, I don't think anybody should take psychedelics. Like I don't like that's how I look at it. And I think people shouldn't take it for recreational reasons because you don't know your motives for why you're doing it and you don't know what's going on. Yeah, I kind of preface all of that because that was what led up to it in a lot of ways. I was tripping every month or so, and it was toward the end of one of the last trips that I took that I was inspired to go to Mass. And so that's kind of confusing. I think that God was at work because God is at work in all things, exactly. All material things. But that doesn't mean that he was forcing my hand in all of my decisions that I made. So I happily accept that God's providence was at work in all of the psychedelic trips that I took, but that doesn't thereby mean that I think that, I should have took it, but what's done is done and all that. But so I had very important experiences. I still cherish a lot of the insight that I got at a lot of those times.
I really relate to the paradox Njada is describing here. I look back at moments when I seemed so far from God, and I can now see how God was at work the whole time in a quiet, hidden way. Even in the midst of my unwise choices and risky behavior, He was working behind the scenes to bring me back to Him. In Njada's case, there were 3 psychedelic trips in particular that God used to bring about a dramatic conversion.
Well, there were kind of these like 3 trips that I had that kind of like went together. Like one of them was the one bad trip that I had, and that kind of like put this like fear of God in me in a way. And but then I like came out of it completely unscathed, and I was like, wow, that could have been horrible. That was, I'm really glad that was okay. And then 2 weeks later I tripped again, and I like kept it a lot more calm, and I like went out into the woods, and I like had this very kind of spiritual experience feeling thing. And but I just started to get this sense that I was like exposing myself. I was opening myself up too much in a way that I wasn't able to regulate like what was going on. And that there was, well, if it started to become very hard not to think that there was, there were higher things. There are higher things that we just can't understand that are nevertheless absolutely relevant and indispensable to human life. So like you can't just mess with that. I had the sense like I'm really playing with fire with this, but I'm already in the midst of this trip, so I should probably just like not freak out about it. And so as I did that, I found myself sort of reaching out to God, like, protect me. I did this kind of stupid thing, didn't I? I've been told that you're a benevolent, loving father. And so I found myself sort of entrusting myself to God, but I just started to be like, yeah, it just makes sense to believe in God. And things that I had learned about Christianity the relevance of those things started to click. I started to see the relevance of the cross and self-sacrifice. Then I felt like I was like really exposing myself to danger though, and eventually I was like, this experience was exhausting, and so I just felt compelled to go and sit in a church. So I like walked across town, and I was like, oh, here's a church. Oh yeah, but it's not open. Oh yeah, well, Catholic churches are like the only ones that are open, like just at a random time. I don't actually know if that's true, but that was what I thought. So I went to a Catholic church and I sat there, and I felt something. I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I kind of can't believe that I believe in God and that I'm so accepting about this right now.
In the midst of this second trip, he didn't look for a spiritual encounter in nature or in human fellowship. He felt compelled to sit inside a church. This is an image from Njada's story that has stuck with me. The church with a door that is open to the seeker, to the sinner passing by. Conversion is ultimately God's work. He is the one who woos the soul. He is the Samaritan, carrying the broken, wounded person to be healed. Yet we need to be ready to cooperate with his work. The door of the church must be open to receive anyone that Christ might bring. Njada's initial step through that open door was simply a foretaste, a prelude to what would unfold during his third and final trip.
And then I took another trip, and because I was tripping with my friend who I was reluctantly attracted to, and I was like, she and I were like kind of like girlfriends, and so I didn't want to be attracted to my girlfriend as a girl, and now I like, I'm feeling like I'm all attracted to her and stuff. So I like, that's just a silly example, but everything that came on the radio, like I started interpreting, I was like, come on, like go, like make a move, tell her, or something like that. And then, I remember at one point, like she went out for a little bit, and then I was like, and then I had this moment with myself in the front of the mirror, and I was like, okay, what's going on? Like, am I a guy? And then I was like, if I'm a guy, like I should be ready to just like admit it. And I was like, can I just picture myself as a guy for a second? And I did. And I was like, I pictured myself as a guy. And then I was like, wait a minute, like this could be really cool. And I just had this moment where I smiled and I laughed, and I because I had like the long hair and stuff, I sort of like, I don't know, felt like I looked more like a surfer dude kind of guy. And it was like, that was more what I looked like, apart from the clothing. And I just was like, oh my gosh, it was like another one of these things. I can't believe that I'm so okay with this. And then I just realized like I was making a mistake, because I had the capacity to like being a guy. I was like, if I even have the capacity to like being a guy, because after all this stuff, I went back to hating being a guy and everything. Like, it took me a long time, and I'm still working on it, like undoing all these mental habits and stuff. But it just showed, like, it unlocked, like, there is this place in my mind I can get there. I have a capacity to be like, this is my body, and there's no possible way that I could love being the way that I am more than to just work exactly with what I have. I guess now I will stop delaying on the religious question, because it was that same day, it was that exact same day that I was like, I think I need to go to confession.
Yes, the day Njada looked into the mirror and began to reconcile with his maleness was the same day he wandered yet again into a Catholic church, this time seeking out, for the first time in over a decade, the sacramental healing of confession.
The social aspect of being a man or being a woman, that you just can't really bypass all this minutia, how very important it is and how very embodied it is. I started to realize, like, I can't get past all of that. It did start to make it seem like maybe the Christians were onto something, because nobody else would really say these sort of things, or as much as it seems like this very fairy tale-ish sort of religion compared to this mature, sort of stripped down spirituality of Taoism and Buddhism. I was like, yeah, I think that there is a bit more of an embodied aspect to being a human person and to being even spiritual. It's not this purely immaterial thing that you just rise above all the illusions of the material world. So I guess because I was having a lot of these thoughts going on, and then I also had that sense of being exposed, being this like gaping wound. I'm just walking around as this like gaping wound, and just anything could just fly into me. I had this sense that I'd been putting myself in a lot of danger, and so I said to my friend, I think I need to go to confession. Again, like I realized I was on LSD, like I was pretty out of it. I was coming down from it, but I was acting strange, and so he was just like, okay, go do that. So I went across the street. There's the big church, this big grand church in this town center. I was like, I'm going to go there. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's a Protestant church. Protestants don't do confession. Catholic church is over there. They were having confession right then, like about half an hour after I got there. And so I just sat there and knelt in the church and prayed. And I looked around the church. I saw one guy came in, he knelt down, and he just folded his hands together in front of himself with like his fingers pointed up, in that very prayerful sort of position. And it seemed very striking to me. So I just imitated him right there. And I thought it was a little weird that I was just watching and imitating him, but it really had an effect on me. And I was like, that's really nice. Like, that's using my body to orient myself to God. Like, I don't know. I was open to these things. I mean, that is what LSD does. And I was open to things that I was not normally going to be open to. And I looked at a mural of the mural that they had over the altar. It was a really beautiful painting of Christ crucified, and a scene of all the different people around, and Our Lady. And Our Lady had passed through my mind a number of times earlier, but she didn't really stand out in this scene. It was Mary Magdalene and St. John at the cross who I was looking at the most, and I was sort of like intimidated by their faith. Like, how can people have faith like that? Because Mary Magdalene was wearing like nun's garb, but she had like bare feet, and her feet were digging in the ground, and she was kneeling down, kissing Jesus's feet. And I was just like, look at like the self-abandonment. How does a person be so unselfish that they just don't care about their comfort? And I was just like, I wish that I would just abandon myself like that to give myself over to someone. And then St. John was there very silently, and St. John was there putting his hand on the cross, just like silently, like he's there with his brother. And I was very moved by that. But then when the line moved up and I said my confession, I hadn't even really thought that much about what I was going to confess. I just knew I needed to confess. So I said some of the like most ridiculous things that I had done. And so the priest like clearly had a sense like, that he was talking to a really broken person. And he told me, he said, I really took to heart what he said. He said, you need to pray for calmness and patience. And so I just tried to remember that. And I left, and I was like I was covered in tears as I walked out, and I like just decided to just like leave all my tears on my face. I went back to the pews, and then I started crying more and more, and I just had to let it all out. So I really did I became willing to just acknowledge any and every bad thing about myself, and not really think that much about whether it was my fault or whether it was my circumstances. Like, I knew that I was sinful, but that I was also broken, and it just was, all of that put together was what that really meant was I need God. I need help from God.
I want to return for a moment to Augustine's interpretation of the Good Samaritan, to that opening image of the church as the inn, the church as a place of healing. I see in this ancient image a powerful depiction of the church's mission in our time, indeed in every time.
So the Augustinian idea of the church is profoundly non-sectarian. It's not a sect, which is often conceived of as a place for the perfect, a place for the virtuous, over against the world. Whereas the Augustinian idea of the church, in his interpretation of the Good Samaritan parable, is not a society of the perfect, but you could say a hospital for sinners. And therefore, the church is always outward facing towards the world rather than against the world.
As I mentioned earlier, the door to the inn must be open and ready to receive whomever Christ brings. But mere openness is not the ultimate end or purpose of the church. It is not simply a place to sit and rest and remain unchanged. It is a place to be healed. The church's call to be open is connected to her mission to heal, to provide the only medicine that can actually save us and make us whole. This means that the church must be open and facing toward the world, while also faithfully preserving and offering the fullness of Christ's teaching and his sacramental grace. Holding this dual posture of hospitality and fidelity is not easy, especially amidst the polarization in our culture and even in the church. It can be all too tempting to give up one for the sake of the other.
It seems like there are kind of two responses that I often hear to especially questions of gender and sexuality. So on the one hand, you might have those who say that in order for the church to be truly welcoming, to be truly loving, she has to change her teaching on gender and sexuality because it's too exclusive. It excludes people. And then on the other hand, you might have someone who perhaps has a more sectarian view of the church, as you're describing, who says, in order for the church to be truly conformed to Christ and not to the world, we really have to draw hard boundaries, and we have to kind of exclude people who would identify as LGBT+, or maybe who are gender nonconforming. So how would you respond to those two perspectives?
Well, with regard to the first one, there's there's really, to say the church has to change X in order to be more welcoming, there's really no end to that. The church, in order to be more welcoming, should stop preaching Jesus. I mean, in order to be more welcoming to Muslims, or in order to be more welcoming to Jews, the church should stop preaching Jesus, or should make it optional, or should turn Jesus into a symbol of union with God, so that you basically have ended up with a church that has lost any sense that it's anything but a sociological grouping. The church is here for the sake of the world. The church is here for the sake of salvation of the world. That's the work of love that the church does in the world, for the world, towards the world. If you, under the banner of inclusivity, progressively erase the church to the point where there is no boundary any longer, then the church is not able to be the sacrament of communion between human beings and God. If we try to make the church so inclusive, what we're really doing is making it our work. We're making it something that we put together. But if you make the church so inclusive that there is no church except for a sociological grouping that's our work, then the whole orientation of the church to the world is destroyed. And its only possible reason for existing, which is to be the presence in the world of Christ's sacrificial love forming communion, then there's no reason to have the church. So what part of church teaching are you willing to compromise? If you compromise any part of it, you're already making an inroad into erasing the church. Yeah, right? So what about the other side of the question? Responding to I guess, a sectarian exclusiveness, or an exclusiveness that would seem to border on an ecclesiology that's sectarian, us against the world. And in that, you might say, struggle, LGBTQ plus people become ciphers for the struggle, or become, symbols for it. So we're hard on these people as a symbol of our separation from the world. Connect that to Augustine's image of the church as an inn, or the hostel for sinners. And so you can't say, well, I don't like your kind of sin, or I don't like your kind of temptation to sin, because that could be said to anybody. At the same time, the church has to avoid scandal. The church can't appear to endorse modes of living, manners of behavior which go against church teaching, in this case of gender and sexuality. Life is messy, and the church has to have ways of receiving people and their messiness, and helping them to become more integrated, helping them to strive for holiness, always being open, I guess you could say, to paths to holiness that we might not have imagined, and yet don't conflict with church teaching.
I asked John about the argument I sometimes hear that there are higher, more essential truths that must be preserved, in contrast to more minor aspects of church teaching, like gender and sexuality, that can be safely changed.
So where's the borderline? I've heard this so often as I've been growing up. There's a hierarchy of truths. There is a hierarchy of truths, of course. The Trinity is the highest in the hierarchy of truths, followed by or coexisting with the incarnation, etc. And people would say, what the church is teaching on sexuality is way, way down the hierarchy of truths. But also there's a funny way in which a truth that is in one way formally farther down the hierarchy of truths actually contains within it all kinds of links to the highest truths So when you say, well, we're only giving up or we're only compromising church teaching on contraception or on marriage, you're basically drawing into that compromise all the ways in which language and imagery about sex and gender are used in theology, are used in the Bible. So these lower level commitments, you might say, actually are intimately tied to the highest level commitments. And then the church is not actually performing its raison d'etre, which is to present to the world, make present in the world, Christ's communion-forming love, the only love which can truly form communion between human beings universally.
Hiding or dismissing what the church teaches about the reality of sin is not loving. It prevents true healing. In Njada's case, the more he acknowledged his own brokenness, the more he was able to understand and experience God's love.
It kind of clicked that, like, I knew it makes no sense to think of God as looking at me as anything other than his creature that he made, that he loves. And if there's anything wrong with me, the only reason that he would be mad, sad, seeing anything negative about that is because he wants his creature to be what he made it to be, what he made me to be. So that gave me the confidence to lay anything and everything on the table. Like the more I lay on the table, the more I'm going to realize how much God loves me. Because it's just going to point out all the more how kind of inconsequential all of my sins are to his love. It was like somehow the more upset I felt about it, the more happy I felt about God's love, because I never had any hope until I actually acknowledged the things that were wrong. It's like the more empty you become, the more you acknowledge your sins, the more God showers his love on you. There's nothing that can stop you from knowing that you're fundamentally loved by God. And so you realize you have every reason to get better. You have every reason to know that God wants you to get better. I guess it felt like I was rewarded for being a sinner in a way. I'm not trying to be technically correct, about that.
No.
It's just, I feel like that is a good way, though, to describe the goodness of God.
I mean, isn't that from scripture, though? Like, isn't there... I'm blanking on the exact story right now, but I feel like it's the woman who washes Christ's feet with her tears and her hair.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps even just like the way you described your story about how you left your tears on your face,
Yeah.
like that woman.
Yeah. And I was, I'm sure that I heard some of these stories too, seeing Mary Magdalene kneeling and kissing Jesus' feet.
The passage that came to mind as I listened to Njada's story was from Luke 7, which describes a sinful woman who learns that Jesus is dining at a Pharisee's house in her town. She comes to the house, bringing an alabaster jar of perfume, and begins to wash Jesus' feet with her tears, drying them with her hair, and then rubbing them with perfume. The Pharisee is alarmed. Doesn't Jesus know he's being touched by a sinner? Jesus, who knows the Pharisee's thoughts, asks him this: who would love a banker more? Someone who had a debt of 50 coins forgiven, or someone with a debt of 500 coins? The one who owed the most, says the Pharisee. Jesus then turns toward the woman, pointing out to the Pharisee the magnitude of her love and gratitude compared to his. Jesus says, I tell you that her many sins are forgiven, so she showed great love. But the person who is forgiven only a little will love only a little. He then says to the woman, go in peace, your sins are forgiven. Tradition holds that this woman is Mary Magdalene, who is also the first to encounter the resurrected Christ. This image of the woman washing Christ's feet with her own tears is the perfect complement to the image of the church as an inn where our wounds and brokenness are tenderly healed. She embodies the one who is healed, the sinner forever changed by her encounter with Christ. She is overflowing with love because of the love she's been given.
Unless your pastoral strategy is fully convinced, first of all, confident that the church offers healing, and that the closer you get to the church, the more that healing is available. And unless you're convinced by that, you're not going to get anywhere, because you're only going to then accommodate weakness, you might say, rather than accompany someone on the way to deeper healing and intimacy. How do you help people acquire the ability to grow that presupposes a kind of healing, a deep sort of healing, which is on offer in the church? And I don't know any other place that you would get the deepest kind of healing, the kind of reconciliation with the love poured out in the incarnation, that deepest intimacy that can't be had anywhere else. And healing is always going to be some true connection into that intimacy. The church is a hard thing to accept into your heart, but if you do it, you begin to have the basis within your own soul, your own spirit, to become welcoming to people into that very struggle, rather than to use membership of the church as a way of claiming a self-righteous status of perfection and therefore shutting other people out. Like I said, there's no one size fits all. You have to take people where they are and start there, and figure out how to open up the deeper meanings of being church, of the church's teaching, of the beauty of it, to people who, like all of us, carry wounds. There's the pastoral issues, but it's never truly a pastoral solution to give up the truth, because the truth is ultimately Christ's love, which bent down to us, which gave everything, all status, all everything, to mix himself in with us sinners and bring him into intimate union with himself. That's his work. To the extent that we try to replace it with our work and make the church a lot less than she is, we're actually removing the sources of healing and the whole raison d'etre for accompaniment, for accompanying people.
If the church closes herself off to someone like Njada, who at the time, let's remember, was a transgender woman coming down from an acid trip, he could not have had that healing encounter with Christ through the sacraments. But if the church had welcomed Njada while telling him there was nothing to heal, that reconciliation, that healing would not have been possible. Fidelity and hospitality, openness to the person, and rootedness in Christ. This is the call of the church, the mission of the Inn of Healing. That open door must lead somewhere, into deeper healing and intimacy with the one who can bind up our wounds. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. From the McGrath Institute for Church Life at the University of Notre Dame, you're listening to the Gender Accompaniment Project. This series is written and hosted by me, Abigail Favali. Today's episode was co-written with Corinne Starsinik. Our producers are Nick and Corinne Starsinik, and our executive producer is Noah Braden. Special thanks to John Cavadini and Njada. for being part of today's episode. Thank you for listening.